Hi guys, welcome back to Owl 003. I wanted to bring on a guest today. He's a friend of mine. I've known Don for it got to be about 4 years now. So, what I like about Don's a really interesting guy, and the reason why I go to him for a lot of things is I experience some weirdness in my sessions. Sometimes you get tasked these very strange remote viewing targets. Oh, first of all, Don, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me. Yeah,
So,
looking forward to this.
so anyway, so like I was saying, I Don has his feet in, in remote viewing like myself, but he's also worked in these other esoteric practices, readings, out of body. He has knowledge on the Kabbalah, the abduction phenomena. So he's got his foot in a lot of these worlds on these topics, and so it's really great to pick his brain about some of these things that I bump into. So Path of Shabala is a written work that you've done, and
Yeah.
what is Shabala to you exactly? Is that a spiritual path, or is that what does that signify?
Shambhala is an energy. That's the way I take it anyway. It's kind of an energy that has developed. How that came about was a friend of mine from Israel. Her and I were developing a website. She came over to visit for a while, and we decided to get a website going. And we're having a really hard time figuring out what to name it. So I was sitting in my bed one day and I'm just kind of contemplating on how this is going to work. And there's this being who walked up to me. It's this being I've had before. And he kind of walks through the wall and he stands there and looks at me. He says, "You should call it Shabala." And I'm like, "Oh, you mean Shambhala?" He says, "No, Shabala without the M." And he turns around and he walks off. And so I'm debating on what's going on. And she left and she went back to Israel. She came over to visit for a while. She left, she went back to Israel. So I got a hold of her. I says, "Does this have any meaning to you? What does it mean?" And she says, "Oh, yeah, this is this. You've got something here." Well, so I don't have anything. This guy just came in and said, "Hey, this is what you should call it," right? So it's an energy. And I do have people that get a hold of me once in a while and says, "Hey, I had a dream last night. This lady comes up. She's got this blue stone. And she presented this blue stone towards this demon that was coming at me, I guess, or this entity was coming at me. She goes, Shabala, Shabala, Shabala. And the thing left. So it's an energy, and they call it like the energy of the ancient ones. She came out with a term on it that says, "Oh yeah, that translates roughly in to how does she put it? Energy of the Elohim, I guess is basically the best way to put
Oh,
it."
gosh, that's so
Yeah.
interesting.
So the Elohim being the ancient ones, if the ancient ones were actually beings that had come down. Everybody says, well, the Elohim was a god, but he wasn't a god. He was gods, plural. So Elohim means there are plural gods that came down to earth, which is star beings, basically. They came down to earth and they taught the people, and they're kind of returning the energy back.
Fascinating.
So it's popping up around the planet here and there, and every once in a while I get somebody will say, "Hey, this being appeared to me in a dream and said Shabala. What does that mean?" So
So let
it,
me ask you this. So you have these these beings, these great beings, these aliens in the true sense of the word, right? I mean, like as if they were
yeah,
they
yeah,
live in this reality from a distant place, coming here, okay? But you also work, which again, every once in a while I'll get a strange target, which will deal with something side noted to this, like with the angelic and the demonic, which seems to be this other layer of this onion. How do you are they aware of each other? Are there players within the realm? How does that dichotomy break
oh
out?
God, that is a really good question. It's also convoluted. It's just like this big pie out there. I I take it there's this dimension right next to ours. I call the interdimensional playground, where all this stuff takes place, and they can do remote influencing or whatever. And that's the playground that is closest to our reality that they could pop in and out of easier. Okay, so it's an interdimensional place. So, for instance, I was told not to talk about the subject of UFOs a long time ago. And every once in a while, they'll show up and kind of demonstrate that, hey, you know, we're watching you. You should be talking about this. It's really bizarre because I'm nobody. I don't know why you would bother with a single parent living in Utah at the time. This is why are you bothering me? Just leave me alone, you know. But they get fixated on one thing, and then they'll come in like a farmer in his field or something, you know, and they'll come in and start doing the interdimensional stuff. But my grandma died when I was a little child. Well, I was like maybe 6 or something, and it really affected me. And so she was hanging around. Every once in a while, she'll pop in and say, "Hey, Don, you know, the ETs are after you again. This is what's happening." And so I'm like, "Well, how the hell do you even know about those guys? You know, isn't this heaven realm over here?" But they're not like these separate boxes. They're all interconnected somehow, some way. And for instance, sometimes when I do some demon work, and I've got to cast out do this demon work with people, I'm getting that that's just the world that they live in outside of ours, because these beings all kind of look alike. Mm-hmm. And I get the feeling that they're just living in a world separate from us, and they'll pop in every once in a while to feed, I guess is the best way to put it.
Fascinating.
They want to take over a body, see what it feels like. And then you have the ghosts wandering around there, and they've got their own little thing that they're doing. And I would think if you could, you know, pierce our vision here, because our vision is really, really limited. You know that when you
we're blind. we're basically blind beings. As far as the perception of light in this reality, we see almost nothing.
Yeah, so I'm figuring around us at any one time, you don't know what's out around you. You can feel it, but it's that little aura of protection that you have around your body that kind of protects you from whatever's going on, and that's your basic protection. But it's all really convoluted. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, they seem to pop in. The ones that really I've been interested in now are the ones that can just pop in, you know, without a ship, because you can look up there, you can see the ship, and like physical beings maybe doing an interdimensional travel type of thing. They'll pop into portals, they'll pop out of portholes, or they're just physical spaceships that fly up to us somehow. So I haven't got everything all figured out that way. I don't know if I ever will. I think it'd take lifetimes to be able to do that.
Yeah, I get it. It's a soupy. I've come to the sense that it may just be more. It's just too much for me to understand. In a way that'll give me that kind of peace. But I wanted to ask you though, because you talk about this in your work in Path of Shabala, these drug demons, and it really kind of resonated with me in that. Because I've been tasked, as a remote viewer, you get these tasks of murder cases, stuff like that. And you know how it is with remote viewing. You get a sense of what's going on in there. You're tapping into their subconscious. You're probing their mind. And, I'm getting goosebumps talking about this.
Yeah.
So I was tasked this very nasty case, where this girl was killed. And that luckily they actually found the guy that did it and all that. And I go into this guy's mind, and I had the sense like, this guy's gone. There's something dark in there now doing these, almost like getting off on doing these very terrible things with this guy's being or whatever. And, sometimes you just pick up on stuff like that. And when when I'm reading about these drug demons, because I know this guy was a drug addict and just kind of a sleazy person, it was almost like that. It was almost like he was a husk of what, he used to be, and something else was in there doing all this maniacal, evil stuff.
I've done quite a bit of shaman work. Okay, so when you go down the lower worlds, stuff happens. Yeah, I kind of got out of that quite a bit because, you're shining light. You walk down in the dark place. There's an energy source right there.
Yeah.
So I kind of got out of that, but I actually have had a type of possession that attached to me and kind of took over for a while, which was really, really difficult to get rid of. But it was not the typical possession that you think of. Okay, so this is going to get onto the lines of what you were just talking about. It's not the type of possession that you think it would be, where, you have the Catholic type, the Roman priest coming in and saying, blah, 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 throwing holy water and crosses, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of possessions that happen whereas you are just gradually moved away from possession of your body. Okay, so they will step in, and at first you're not going to notice anything, but you know, you may have a thought in your mind or something rolling around in there, and they eventually start taking over. They assimilate the body. So it got to the point where they were trying to assimilate in me. This one especially was trying to assimilate in me. And there was an instance where I really noticed it, where I was like trapped inside looking at a movie going on outside me. And intellectually and ethically and morally, this was not anything really big. I mean, it's not, you know, criminal activity or anything like that. You know, it was nothing bad, but it was against my moral objectives of what was going on. And so I'm watching my body kind of go through the motions, and my mouth was moving, but it wasn't me moving my mouth. Yeah. And you can see, it's like looking through the back of your head, because you can see what's going on, but you don't know what you can do to take control of it and, you know, get your body back. You know, at that point I thought, okay, I've got a problem, and I need to go get some shamanic help to get some clearing done on that, which I did. So it was gone, but it is really bizarre. So I can honestly believe that when some people go out and they commit these crimes, they really don't understand what they're doing. They may just get to the point where they're blacking out. And so they'll go ahead and they'll go through it because this possession, the spirit is possessing them so bad that it can just take over and do what it wants at times. You know, some certain triggers will trigger it. They'll say, okay, I see this, I'm going to go after it. And they literally don't know what they're doing. So I've run across people who have had drug addiction problems who say, yeah, I can hear the drug calling me. And if you look into it off to the side, there's literally a drug demon off to the side that say, hey, come on, I want some of this. You got to fix me up. You got to hook me up. You know, because they like the energy that's associated with it. And if you take it for long enough and you get into some sort of tragedy, like you get in a bad fight, or, you know, you have a tragic event happen to you, that aura is no longer there to protect you. So it'll break up a little bit or crack, and then something could jump in and take you over. You know, they say, hey, you know, I'll take charge. Sometimes they just want the feel of what's going on. If they're inside the aura connected to the body, they can feel what's happening. And they like that energy that's associated with getting high or committing a crime, or, you know, the fear that's involved with a murder or whatever they may be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of the, you know, and I've even like bumped into these, you know, and we'll feel like these words come in with some of these nastier things, and like literal archonic beings, like those kind of terms have come in, you know, like these energy feeding, you know, kind of beings, which similar, very, very similar to what you described. So,
and I think that's unique to planet Earth. I don't think that's really something that's going on. This seems like a little battleground or prison of some sort. So go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, and it's, you know, and again, and I think I'm like you, and I really wanted to hear your perspective about this, about how this works with this angelic, demonic / and then you got this alien dichotomy. This, you know, it's this broad spectrum of things, because I've seen it, and again, my lens is going through remote viewing, which is, you know, very much less kind of intense as some of the stuff that you do without a body, or more of a deep type of a, you know, like astral projection or whatever. It's more like just looking through a window at some of this stuff, but sometimes you get a piece or a taste of something. But, you know, so any interaction you have with these guys, I'm assuming, is telepathic. You're going to get telepathic consciousness to consciousness communication when you dealt with this gray that you talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all telepathic, but you're there physically in your body. Okay. It's
because this guy seems very kind. I mean, this being you talked to him, he seemed very like he was kind of like a guide in a way. It's almost like he was trying to help you out.
This guy who was
this gray that you talk about.
Yeah. Oh, okay, that guy right there. Yeah, he's been with me my whole life. He was there. He introduced me to my mom when I was being born. We were sitting up in the corner of the hospital, looking down on her as she was going in labor, and he was describing to me how the connection process works with the body, and that's where I came up with the, you know, the selves, the three selves. You got the the conscious self, the unconscious self, and the subconscious self, how they're kind of interconnected together.
Mm-hmm.
But he was able to explaining that to me. He says, "Don't forget, this is how it works." And he's coming down from time to time, giving me instructions. I mean, when I was a little child, like 4 years old, I would guess, at 3 years old, 4 years old, they would come and get me, and we'd float these little balls across the room to each other on the ship. So they were like plasma balls; they weren't real balls, And so he would float this ball over to me telepathically. He'd tell me, "Okay, push it back to me." And I would try throwing it at first, he said, which wasn't working. He says, "No, don't throw it. Use your mind. Use your mind." And so my whole life was kind of geared around develop my consciousness to be able to do some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking about the remote viewing. I think what remote viewing does is it kind of focuses your mind to a specific pattern to be able to project yourself out. Okay. And so when you get to the advanced remote viewing stage, what you're doing is you're having more of a projection of your body. I mean, your spiritual self, you're projecting it out.
Your energy body, whatnot.
Yeah, your energy body, whatever it may be. And then you're actually being able to be noticed by those beings in the room. I mean, you've expressed this sometimes. You says, "Well, I think they saw me."
Yeah, that was actually one of my questions, because I was going to talk about, and I didn't want to give away too much, because some of this stuff is scary. You know what I mean? Like you gotta kind of protect yourself. So, but there was a situation. I'm just going to do it like that, and like I said, if there's anything you want me to edit out, I can. But there, because I'm going to put it like this: Don was in a situation, because I've done a whole thing on being spotted at targets. Okay, because it's not even me. I've got remote viewers a mile long that have had this experience. Okay,
yeah.
And the real academics are really planting their feet in this, because they just cannot accept it. But some locations, okay, there's a period, it's always the same type of thing.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's when it's an alien situation, or you're in a very sensitive place on the earth or something, or some place that you think if there was really advanced technology to detect a remote viewer, that's the kind of place where a person would get detected. And the experience, because I talked to you about this, is, well, can you describe like the uncomfortableness or the sense of just knowing that you were kind of, can you go into that a little bit without kind of giving up?
Oh yeah, I'll go into it a little bit. I'm not going to tell about where I went on this particular instance, but I'll just say it was a top secret government facility. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, it was top secret. And when I first started getting involved with this, I was very naive to it, because I was thinking, "Oh, look what I can do. I can do this, man. I'm the only one. I'm going to go out there and check everything out." So I just went kind of wild and was all over the place. I was literally all over the at least the solar system, checking stuff out, And so I'm flying over this certain place in the astral body. I think, "Hey, this would be cool. I'm going to go down there, man, because I can go down there. They're not going to know I'm there." And I just sit there and just kind of lounge in the room for a minute, right? So I pop in, and immediately after I did that, some guy walks in and says, "We got a bug." I'm thinking about it. God, he sees me. At this time, I'm just kind of amazed. It's like, how did they seize me? And this means this was back in the day too. This was like maybe 30 years ago. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, they've really got a lot of technology here, but not just technology on our side, on the spiritual side. They know how to detect this
This
stuff.
was that long ago when you got this? When you did this?
Yeah.
Oh my God. It just makes
it was that long ago. It was about 30 years ago. Okay. Yeah. So when they say, "Hey, the government has gotten rid of its remote viewing program," they may have gotten rid of the remote viewing program, but they did not get rid of the conscious studies program, because they're still doing that. That they are. And so I left. I said, "Oh man, they know I'm here. I'm going." So I left. But when you are traveling in that reality, you leave an energy trail, because you're connected to the body by, this is true, it's like a silver cord or something. So there's an energy trail that leaves, and they can directly go back to where you are. You could be sitting in your room.
Like a residual track.
I was.
Like a residual energy track back to your location.
And that's what I do. I track people like that too. So I immediately left. I just went straight to the moon, right? I think, okay, I'm far enough away that they're not going to find me. and I'm looking down my residual energy track of that log string, and I see this bullet type of this big ball of plasma or something coming right up the trail, right towards me. And I'm freaking out. I'm thinking, I don't know what this is, but it does not look good. Right? It does not look. So I'm throwing up walls along the trail to see if I can prevent that from getting to me. And the walls I keep throwing up are thicker and thicker and thicker. Finally, it stops just not too far from me, and it just kind of dissipates. I'm thinking, I don't know what that was, but that's the last time I do something like that, because they can recognize you. So if you're thinking of going to some military installation, even in Russia, because Russia is really big on this kind of stuff, Russia or China or US or, even these bases under sea that you hear about, which I've been to as well, that are ET bases that are down there under the ocean. They'll track you, they'll find you. I mean, I had this incident where I did some of this work for an individual. And we thought we were going to go out, we're going to save the world, right? And we're going to stop the bad ETs, we're going to do this. So, well, I did this. We got together, we went down to one particular place, and I did what I call planted like an energy bomb to where it would go off, but it would send positive energy throughout the system that they were in that particular area. 2 weeks later, and I am not joking at all, 2 weeks later, there's an individual shows up who works for the Air Force right next to the meeting place that I have. And she tells me this really bizarre story about how she was suddenly just pulled off a project, shipped over 2 blocks away from where I was doing my meetings. And it was just, she said, I don't know why they did this. I was right in the middle of a special project. And she was like this top secret biologist in the military, right, in the Air Force. It says, they shipped me down here, and now I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just sitting here, right? It's their way of saying, hey, you know what? We got our tabs on you. We know what you're doing. Stop it. And 2 weeks later after that, I had a heart attack. So you put two and two together, tell me that. That was one of the most bizarre things. That's where they were really insistent on saying, stop doing what you're doing. And when you're out there doing this stuff, if you think you're going to go out and just randomly clear the world of all this stuff or whatever you're doing, then it's open warfare, because now they got an ability to be able to say, no, we're coming back at you. We're going to do something. So when you get into this remote viewing and you're really out there and you're an advanced remote viewer out there going around, you can remotely influence the situation. So,
yeah. Oh yeah, it's not I say this all the time. It's not a game. I mean, it could be scary, and even like a very novice remote viewer could be having a good day or have the first timer effect, and you give them some serious target like that, and they'll slip right into it, and then you're kind of putting that guy into a scary situation. You had mentioned Russia. I had tasked somebody something, and it kind of inadvertently they found themselves in a very sensitive area, which made a lot of sense, and and I called you immediately after because it was so scary to me. I mean, because it was so similar to your situation. And this was in Russia, and they picked up on him like that. I mean, this is a session he did solo, and you could tell he didn't know what was going on. But the wording, the phrasing, and then he was feeling uncomfortable, like something burning in here. Like, you could tell there was some attention on him. And like I said, guys, you could see the same thing happen with 10 different people, and it's like eventually you got to say, sometimes it just is what it is.
I think what's happening with that particular guy that you're talking about, they
that was in the future too. Sort of that was in the future. I tasked him precognitively. That was a precognitive target.
Oh my God! And they must have had another way to be able to deal with that. It was like electrical field or something. I don't know. But wow, it's pretty intense at times. Yeah, you definitely got to be careful about what you're doing and where you're going, because if you think that there's nobody out there watching you or keeping track of what's going on for these remote viewers, you don't know what you're getting into. They can trace back to you. But a lot of times they'll just look at you. If it's aliens or something like that, they'll just look at you like, okay, whatever. Get a good luck and go home.
Yeah, I get the same thing. As far as ETs, I not always. It's kind of like one of those things, like if you get too close to them, they like I get a sense they may know that I'm there. And it's kind of always the same thing. They're just kind of like, They just kind of make you know that they're aware of you, but they don't really care too much. There's only been a couple of times where there was something there where it really wanted me out of there. And I just think it, just like anything else in life, you get some beings that are just really nasty. And they may be doing something that I don't know why, but I mean, I've told you about some of that where I've had these where stuff has stepped in like spiritually and said, "Hey, what are you doing here? These guys are getting, you know."
I had it. I had something similar to that happen, but it was there's this planet I would go to. It's kind of like, I don't know. I was in the process of visiting what we call the heavenly realms for a while, right? Mm-hmm. And I got up to this planet, and I was actually guided to this planet by this lady. I'd go in these meditations. She would take me up, and she'd say, "Hey, let's go over here." I would go over there, and I would sit down on this planet, and I would zoom in on it. And as I'd zoom in, there was a grass field, just this knee-high grass. It was growing. You could see the energy attached to it. So it kind of had a mind of its own that was going to do what it wanted to do. But if you walked through it, it would just kind of give way to you, or you'd feel it really soften your foot. So I'm walking through it, and there's a big hill in the distance. It's just, everything's really green and bright colored. And there's a house sitting right there. So looks like a medieval stone house with a thatched roof on it. And I said, "What's that?" She said, "Oh, that's your house. That's your home." Yeah. That's interesting. And then there, off to the one side, there's the ocean right there. And if you sit on the edge of the cliff overlooking the ocean, which is maybe 50 feet up in the air, right? You look down, you can see a pebble beach, and the water would come up on you on the beach, and you can see the energy flow coming up with the water, and then it would just drop, and none of the pebbles on the beach would move. It would just, would just come up and drop on the beach and didn't move the pebbles unless the pebbles wanted to be moved, type of thing. So I had a habit of going up there because my energy trail, I could just follow it back and forth and go there when I wanted to. Well, I get up there one time, something happened energetically to me. I don't know what it was. It felt like a walk-in or something, but it happened to me. So I'm up there sitting on the beach, just looking at everything, and this guy comes walking up to me, and he looks at me, and he says, "What are you doing here?" And my guess, he was just some sort of portal guard. So they do have these guards.
Oh my gosh!
In different places.
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
Right? And so this guard or whatever it is walks up to me, because I've been going through a portal, obviously, and I wasn't recognizing it. And he walks up to me and says, "What are you doing here?" I was kind of confused. I said, "Well, I always come here. This is my place." He said, "Oh, no, you don't belong here anymore. You belong over there." And I took off, and I've never been back, so they kind of, it's one of those guards that shows up every once in a while in different areas and says, "Hey,
portal guard.
Have access to this anymore."
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You just gave me chills when you said that, because the guy that showed up in this scary session, this one that was back in 82 where this whole crew went missing, okay? Yeah. This guy had literally told me, these were his exact words, when you open a time tunnel, you need to be careful. You don't know what's on the other, because you don't know what's on the other side. And the whole session, I mean, you can see this guy's like up in the air, kind of like, I had the sense like somebody's like watching me remote view this session. It was so bizarre. And then for you to just say that, like a portal guard, wow. It was almost like he came off like a god, like he's wearing this garb, and, that's kind of how he looked in my mind's eye.
Angelish. Yeah. Kind of angelish looking. Yeah. He walks up to you and says, "Hey, you know what?" And he could tell that you're not dangerous just by your energy, but he's giving you the warning, like, "Hey, be careful what you're doing. You don't know what's there." And this particular guy just looked at me and said, "Oh no, this is not your place anymore." So you go through these energy shifts as you're doing this kind of work. So yeah,
amazing, fascinating stuff. So let me ask you this: you spent some time out in the desert area, haven't you? What are your thoughts on some of that stuff? What do you think's going on out there?
Where's this at? Deserts?
Like in Utah and stuff, like in Skinwalker and all that, and over by Blind Frog and stuff. You got any comment on that?
It's funny you bring that up. I just did a shoot last year. I did a shoot for Blind Frog Ranch.
Love that show.
And so in season 3, which is scheduled to be set up in January of 2024, they did a 4-hour shoot with me. So I do talk about that a little bit, the experience I had up in that area. But I've been up there a couple times, and It's really bizarre because you have Skinwalker Ranchers is over here. The Indians say, "No, I don't want to go over there. Don't bring me over there. It's a bad spot." Because what they're finding, if you watch Skinwalker Ranch at all, that there is some sort of energy lying underneath the ranch itself that is opening a portal up, and a lot of stuff is going on right there. So it brings through whatever it brings through. You know, Thunderbirds have been brought through it before, Bigfoot, those weird dog that they have a dog, that big wolf.
Dog man.
It's like maybe about, yeah, no, it's a wolf. It's like about 3 feet tall. And it'll come through there. It's the thing that grabbed the sheep's head, the cow's head. It was trying to bring it through a fence. You know, it just shows up. And the farmer goes out there and he grabs a shotgun, or maybe it was a rifle of some sort, and he puts 3 shots into the thing before he lets go of the cow's head and just walks off. And he goes over and picks up a piece of the fur that got shot off of it and says, "Man, that thing should have been dead." Yeah, and he just walks back off into the portal, and he takes off, you know. And he's actually had an incident. The original farmer had an incident where he walked by a calf that had just been born earlier, patted it on the head, took like 3 steps, turned back, and they heard it like turns back around, and the cow is now totally mutilated. You know, within 3 or 4, within 5 seconds, you know, it's like boom, boom, it's over. So they have a way to be able to bring you back, take whatever they're doing and bring it back instantaneously. So when you're, like I've always told people, when you're abducted or you're taking, you don't know how long they've taken you, because they can manipulate time to place you back like 5 minutes later, an hour later, whatever, but you could be gone for weeks.
Yeah. Look, and I just, like, again, I'm piecing these little things together from time and sessions, this and that. But I've gotten things like pocket universes, pocket dimensions. It's not a constraint to it. It's almost like the time for us is the prison, and they're able to completely live without that. You know, it's like an element they don't have to contend with at all. It almost seems like, with the technology that they're using.
Well, you think about this. We're in the Milky Way galaxy, which is flying through the universe at, I don't know, they're saying hundreds of thousands of miles an hour or something like that, some unbelievable time, which is bound to affect time, right? And then we are on the outside of the Milky Way galaxy, going around a planet that's even flying probably a little faster than that, because it's going around the middle of the Milky Way galaxy, right? And the pinwheel effect, it's just kind of spinning around the galaxy. So if you take all that into account, then we're truly creatures of time and space. Yeah, and it depends where we are in space. So if they were to take you to the middle of the galaxy, time is going to be much different there than it is on the outskirts of the galaxy. Now, if you could take yourself back to another galaxy someplace, they may not have time at all.
Yeah.
Because maybe they're just standing still and they're not moving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, so I don't know if we really take that into effect sometimes about, and then on planet Earth, we gauge time just by human terms. I mean, it's strictly, you know, hey, the sun's coming up, it must be such and such in the morning, but that's just because we base time on how we spin around the sun and how the planet spins.
Yeah.
So time is an illusion anyway.
Mm-hmm. No,
it's something we arbitrarily give it. Yeah. So,
and you take into consideration too you know, we know that, you know, I could take somebody, give them a crash course in remote viewing and show them that, you know, there is this non-local aspect to who we are. Now, if you have this technology, I mean, we know that consciousness can be, you know, it doesn't have to be right here, you know. And knowing that, if you know that, and if you have a technology, you're that advanced, if these guys could literally, you know, bounce from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, you know, to keep going, you know, if they want to keep jumping into these bodies, it just wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it just from what I've seen, because what is your sense when you're dealing with these guys as far as the alien aspect of it? Do you feel that there is an age, an intelligence, a wisdom to these guys?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, the reptilian guys, that at least the ones that are living on this planet, which I consider the bad guys, they got the darker energy.
Yeah,
the big baddies, because they've been here for longer than we have, you know, longer than human beings have. Um, it seems to me that they have the ability to be able to capture the soul and just get reborn into another body. And so they have all the knowledge when they're born, and then they just start using it right off the bat, all the knowledge that they have. And so they're not really revered as somebody that they need to teach because they already know. They just need to be taught how to remember that information. It's it, and it just keeps. I think the life cycle just keeps on going.
Now, do you think that these guys jumping now in the case of the reptilians, for instance, because I've seen all these reports, and even in sessions I've had some where these guys are really nasty. Now, but they're obviously old. They obviously have intelligence, and yet they have this darkness upon them. Now, do you think this is an influence from outside of themselves, or do you think this is from literally from like them taking themselves so far from maybe source, from, maybe by body jumping, or what do you think has gotten them into this dark place?
I think it's just the nature of this planet, I think, as they kind of just sunk into it. And that's why a lot of ETs really don't come down here and want to spend time on this planet, because it's got this energy. It's the planet itself that's got this energy that you just kind of sink into. Yeah. And I think they've sunk into it so far where you can rationalize with them, but they have their concept of how things are going to be because for instance, wars on the planet, that kind of thing. They like how the wars on the planet go because there's so much negativity to them, and they like that kind of energy. It's kind of what they've habilitated. So most wars are probably related to the darker side of the human race, which affiliates to their deeper energy. The planet itself, I keep hearing people say, well, you know what, we do the 100-monthly effect, and everybody believes in something that's going to happen, right? I don't believe that's ever going to happen because we can do the 100-monthly effect on the positive side, but on the other side, you have the 100-monthly effect that steps into effect to balance it out. So this planet is kind of on a homeostasis level where it always likes to balance itself out to some sort of normal on the scale wise. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the planet itself has to jump before the energies change on the planet, which I construct that as being, well, the planet's flying through space, the Milky Way galaxy is flying through space. Our particular part of the universe which we're in is going through a void, or has been exiting a void, so to speak, because there's the dark energies out there, and there's lighter energies, there's heavier, what I would call heavier energies, lighter energies out there, and they're big, huge pockets of energies that were created just because, like maybe an exploding nova or something like that would, boom, leave this energy void in the universe. And so you go through those and the planet kind of sinks, and you come back out of it, and not just the planet, but our solar system will change and effects will take place. I think it's physically where we are in time and space in the galaxy and in our universe that kind of determines how the planet is going.
I feel like we're very unbalanced. I feel like we've got all this crazy technology, and we're going to the moon and stuff, but then we're still like contemplating like nuclear wars on the table. It just seems so off balance, doesn't it? It just seems so weird.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
I just don't shouldn't there be a kind of a, how could we be so like this and then like so upside down spiritually? It just makes so little sense to me.
We do these wild swings here, doesn't it? It's not like, boom, we're here and here. And it's kind of, there's always something happening here. I look at it as kind of a prison where you get all these different energies mixed together, and you never know what's going to happen. It's a big surprise, kind of like a school.
I definitely get that sense. I agree with you there. So have you had physical contact with these beings? Like, have you ever smelled an odor or coming from one of them, or have you got texture of their skin?
If you're talking the grays, they have an ammonia smell to them if they're a particular type, because there's a lot of different types of grays. I mean, they're not all the same, but you're talking the biological computer type of grays will definitely have like this ammonia smell to them. and they you don't really get to see too much of their skin, so to speak, because they most of the time they're wearing some sort of uniforms or something to
Mm.
that kind of contain that kind of stuff. But every once in a while, you do get this ammonia type of smell that will pop up with them. So it's I don't recall ever really touching him so much because it's hard to do that. I mean, you look at Travis Walton, if you follow him at all,
Mm-hmm.
and the experiences he had, um, they kind of fled. They ran away. You know, he was waking up and they were trying to put him back to sleep, and he was like, he wasn't going to go back to sleep. He wasn't having it, and was in the mood of attacking him. And
They
they
backed off.
fled because yeah, they backed off because they didn't know how to handle the situation.
Mm-hmm.
They were programmed to say, okay, this is our programming. This is what we do. Oh, no programming, flee. You know, and so they run and try to find somebody to help them with the situation that's going on. So everything is fine and dandy as long as you follow protocol. But if you break protocol, then they just like freak out. They're like,
They don't know how to
whoa,
react. They don't know how to deal with
yeah,
you.
yeah, computer programming doesn't account for this, and we're valuable, and we're going to break, and you know, that kind of stuff.
What do you think the U.S.'s relationship? Who do you think we have deals with? Do you think we have deals with some of these guys?
Well, one of the experiences I had, I was actually abducted by the military. It was by the Air Force, and it was down there near Area 51. I was doing had a speaking engagement down there for 2 days, and they came one night and took me, and so I know for a fact that they particular branches of the military associated with gray beings. Well, not gray beings, but the draconian beings, I guess is what you call them. They're lizard-looking guys,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And they have a very powerful aura about them. It's like, okay, you're going to do what we want you to do. And you say, oh, I don't think so. Yeah. Then they get really mad and aggressive. So we had they do definitely have, because I saw them in the military facility itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a session at Dulce one time. I thought I was just going to go around there and I was going to check the session out. I was going to see what was going on. And I dropped down into what was some sort of a facility. And in the top floors, it was a very human-like facility. And you go down gradually, it starts to mixture. And then you get down to the bottom. It's so dark that I really couldn't see. You know, I just feel the energy was really bad there. And it's like they were blocking me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just left. I said, I'm not going to stick around here. I don't think it's, excuse me. I've heard stories of them capturing souls, so to speak, so you can't leave. And whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But I do know that based on some stuff I was doing in the lower worlds, that they do capture your soul. And I know the Catholic Church will come out and say, well, you can't take over a soul that's not yours to take over. Well, they can't take it over, but they can capture it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen an incident where I was communicating with this lady, and she says, yeah, you should get your chakra stripping. Chakra stripping is wonderful, man. I feel so good when I get my chakra stripping. And I'm thinking, what? You know, that doesn't sound right. You know, it's like chakras are your life source of your body. There's what the spirit emits throughout your physical self to create the aura and to operate the different spiritual functions of your body, right? So I'm thinking, I gotta check this girl out, you know. So I checked her out, and found that the kids were really scared to be around her. And attached to the front of her aura, you know, like her front stomach plexal or whatever you call it, there was an old hag-looking lady who had taken over her body. And she was literally on the outside pounding, trying to get back in, but there's just the one chakra that had attached to her, and all her chakras are gone, and this old hag thing was sitting there directing traffic, so to speak. So I thought, lady, no, I don't think I'm getting a chakra stripping done today. I think I'm fine.
Wow. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, look, I did MS-15 once. I was tasked that target, and that was supposedly this mothership around the sun of, you know,
Oh, that'd be interesting.
you know, they, you know, I think they didn't like from my experience, when I get these weird targets, the more weird, like as time goes by, it's like my energy body's getting stronger. As like and it's like
Yeah,
I'm like a bigger light when I show up. So I do this
that's
target.
exactly what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can actually see this in the session. But I got there, they didn't want me there. One of these portal guys that you're mentioning showed up. It might be the same guy. I couldn't tell, but it was like that. And I actually sketching him like this, like get the fuck out of here, get out of here. You're not supposed to be here. And I kind of pushed through it, and I got to the point with my pen where I literally I go to write, and I couldn't. It was like something was stopping me. I could not push any farther. And then finally, it's so uncomfortable. You finally just like forget it. I mean, there's nothing there that's that important, right? Keep enduring this because they can make you feel uncomfortable when they don't want you there.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. It's I've had similar events happen to me like that before. Like I was saying, it's I was taking one time, and this is really weird how this was done. Okay, I was meditating in my room when I was about ready to, do my thing. What happens is I go into mode what I call observation, and an observation is just where you absence of any thought whatsoever. You put all your thoughts in a little container or something, and you're totally in an observation mode. You don't try to make sense or rhyme or reason out of anything whatsoever.
Yeah.
And when I was, this is interesting too, because when I was going through my awakening, what I call my awakening, and they were teaching me how to do some of this stuff, excuse me, one of the things they taught me to do, which I found out later when I went to the Monroe Institute, was the same thing that Robert Monroe was teaching. And it kind of like, I listened to the first tape Robert Monroe had, and it's like, I'm already doing that, right? Way back in the 80s, no, 90s, I should say, early 90s, before anybody I even heard of anything like that. I found out they were teaching me Robert Monroe techniques. I went back to Robert Monroe's, studios and went through the astral projection session. So I'm already doing this. But anyway, we go through the act of observation. I'll throw that up, sorry. Go through the act of observation, and then you take off. And so I'm in that mode, and I'm about ready to take off. And I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought here. That's really good, huh? I'll go to that. Yeah.
I do it all the time.
Yeah. I'll tell you about this. I'm ready to take off, and I get this voice pops into my head, and it tells me, stop, look, behold, And so I'm outside my body, up on top of my roof, and I'm like about 300 feet up in the air, maybe even more than that, maybe about a mile up in the air. I look down around, and there's all these buildings that got these bubbles and these domes over the top, right? All over the place. And they were all religious organizations or religious buildings that have these domes over the top of them. And hanging out of the middle of them, there was this little light shining, And I'm thinking, oh, that's an energy center. That's interesting. They put an energy center in each one of these buildings, So that's.
So
what you see out there is totally amazing.
So let me ask you this: was your impression that I mean, because I know you're like, people need to understand when you're remote, even more so when you're doing what you're talking about, this really immersive. Blinders are off. Okay, you realize how blind we really are when you do some of this, because you're seeing the layers that we cannot see. So you're seeing these energetic. This energy around these structures. Now, would your sense that this
bubbles,
these bubbles, would you say that now, is this your sense this is like an energetic shield from this? That was your sense?
It's to keep the energy basically inside of the building. And this happens to a lot of places. You can do this, you'll see these little energy centers around, and the aliens are really good at doing that as well. They know how to project the energy centers, which is kind of what happens with your aura. You're in the center of an energy center that is your protection while you're down here doing your thing. And if you damage that, if the auras aren't working like they should and isn't projecting this energy center out, then boom, you could have some problems. Not necessarily going to have them, but you get these things that will recognize you. Say, like, especially in a bars, you go in a bar setting, and if it's a local pub where a lot of people are going in there and just getting thrashed every day, they are, their personalities will change it because they got this little, you know, demon hanging around and that likes the energy. You know?
Yeah.
It's just a distraction, that kind of thing. So I don't want to discourage you from going to have a drink once in a while if that's what you're
Oh
into.
no,
But yeah,
no, no. But I look, I totally get what you're saying. It's
yeah,
like this from what from what you're saying and from what I've seen. It's like it's a slow process. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
they just first start small,
Oh, I know
insignificant.
what I was getting into.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was talking about being able to observe. Okay, you go into this observation mode, and then you go out and you do your thing, and you're seeing something without bias. You get a real. For me, I get a really good picture, and I can see very clearly what's going on, and where I'm at, and what's happening, without bias, because all that stuff and all the thoughts and the ability to place a value on something. I'm talking even colors. Okay, so you're looking at the color, you're not making a value determination. You
Hmm.
shut your mind off. Okay, and I think that's kind of what remote viewing does too. They get up there in that upper edge there, and what they're doing is training the mind to shut stuff off and focus on the intent and the objective,
I
so that
would,
your mind will
yeah.
work like you want the mind to work.
Exactly. Now, Ingo, in CRV, Ingo calls them personal increments. As you talked about putting them in a box, putting your thoughts in a box.
Yeah,
Before every
yeah,
session, I dump all this crap onto a separate sheet of paper. It's my laundry list. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to. But exactly what you're saying. When you have you do this for a while, you train your mind to I don't care. I don't care what's there. I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to let it come.
yeah,
And when you get to a point where you don't care what the target is, you don't, you have no inference of what's in there. You dumped everything out of your mind. Now all you're doing, now you're just focusing on this. What in my case would be a coordinate, but you're just focusing on this intent. It's frees you all that space. It leaves up this big space for whatever your intention is focused on. All this stuff you've
yeah.
dumped. So it kind of, if you're able to
You,
do that, it go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, you're shutting the programming off. You're turning the computer off, and you're letting your body do its own thing, and while your mind is doing the visual thing. Okay, so you're not that way. You're not making any projections on anything. It's like I got to the point where and they taught me this, and they told me what I was doing a long time ago because I couldn't figure out what it was. Like, God, am I astral projecting? It just didn't seem right that I was astral projecting. That's why I went back to Robert Monroe's class and took an astral projection class because I want to figure out what was going on. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't know I had an idea, but I asked them when I started getting into this, which was very organic. It was just kind of something that kind of developed. I asked them, I said, okay, well, what am I doing? And the voice comes back and says, your consciousness sharing. I'm like, well, okay, I can see the consciousness. Who am I sharing it with? Who am I sharing it with? What's going on that way? Because I don't understand the sharing part. And I still don't understand the sharing part where you're just sharing with the universal mind, or if there's an individual out there actually doing the watching and you're sharing with him, or with this my higher self. It's like the sharing part I don't get. And that's why I kind of been investigating all these little things. So it wasn't like lucid dreaming. It wasn't astral projecting. It wasn't. It seemed really similar to remote viewing, but all I was able to do at the time was just kind of study the basics of remote viewing because I never took a class. And after talking to you, I said, oh, this is very. It's on the upper edges of viewing that they kind of dropped me in the middle of. It's okay. Go do what you got to do. So, but it has gotten me into serious trouble because I'm naive enough to think that nobody out there was doing this kind of thing, and nothing out there was going to hurt me, and I was going to be safe, and yada yada yada. So I was actually concentrating in the lower worlds and got myself in some really big trouble. Because there's times I was down there. One time I was down there specifically. I told you I was kind of possessed, taken over one time. There's a that actually bit me on my arm, and as I was sitting in my chair, I could feel my arm jump physically, and the scars are kind of there right now. You see, there's two little sunspots there, brown spots right there where you bit me, that you could that feel them in the sun. Okay, so if I'm out there out in the sun, I could feel particular spots right there warm up. So it affected me physically. So what you're doing when you're out there doing your thing, there in, well, at least me, the consciousness sharing out there in the world, I got to, because I could feel it when I'm in my physical body, I'll be out there. It's kind of like a remote entity type of thing that's going on, whether it's in my head and I can't get out of my head, whether it's actually a physical thing, and I'm not sure. But it was really tough after that for a while.
Let me ask you that. Our signal's breaking up a little bit, but I want to get this one question in before you go.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about we once talked about, you were telling me about this story about when this gray was kind of teaching you to remote view, and he kind of held up this thing. I don't remember if he held a picture or something, but he's like, can you know what I'm talking about, right? Where he's like, be the target, be the target.
Yeah, see the target, feel the target, be the target.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that on my blog. I wrote about that on my blog. It's okay, I'm on this ship, and I'm sitting on this ship, and I'm sitting in a chair, kind of like a dentist chair in a way, but it's inclined up. But the chair itself, you can't feel it underneath you. It's perfect body temperature, and it's really comfortable, so you can't really feel it there. Right? And I'm looking around the room, and it's, just glancing around like this. I've not moved my head, just lift my head up. I'm just kind of looking around the room, and I'm seeing that it's definitely on a ship because it's got this silver tint to it, or chrome-like tint, really shiny, and there's you can't tell if there's any seams in it anywhere. It's just like it's been poured naturally, right? And in front of me, there's this pole. It's going vertically up into the ship. Maybe it's about 2 feet wide. And on front of it, there's a target. And it's like maybe 20 feet away, right up in front of the chair. And this target looks like a shooting target, right? Like you have the little red dot in the middle, and then it's
like
concentric circles.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a bullseye. And it's sitting there in front of me, directly in front of my eyesight. And whatever reason, I don't know, maybe this has something to do with some other training I'm doing, but off to the left-hand side, there's a clock on the wall, like the same kind of clock that you would have in a classroom back in the 60s, in 60s or 50s. You look up on the wall, you see this clock that has the batteries in it and the hands and all that kind of stuff on it, And it was sitting up on the wall. Off to the side of me, there's a little counter, and the gray was standing next to the counter, and there's an alarm clock, one of the old-fashioned kind that goes ding, 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 and has clackers that clack back and forth. So you got to wind it up, and a notepad and some paper. That's all that was there. I don't know what they had to do with what I was doing, but maybe I was doing something else before this. I don't know. So I'm sitting there looking at this target sitting on this column, and I hear this gray voice behind me, right next to me. He's my teacher. He's been there for a long time. He says, see the target, feel the target, be the target. Like, let's go, man. And so I try to project myself out of my body, and I maybe get 3 or 4 inches. Sometimes I get like a foot, and I just spring back in. And I wasn't quite doing it right, and it kept going back and forth, back and forth. And this went on, I don't know how long it went on. It seemed like for hours, and I was just getting really pissed off at the time, so he goes, see the target, feel the target, be the target. And it kept on going and going and going. And I'm like, oh my God, just give it a break, dude, And finally, after one failure, he says, very good, very good. He'd go, very good after every attempt, right? Very good, very good. And finally he says, I'll show you very good, you asshole. You son of a bitch. I'm going to, and I was a little bit more explicit in my language with that man. He says, you want the target? I'm going to be the target, right? And so right after he said, be the target, I just went, boom. It was my anger that propelled me up into the middle of this target, because your anger is a very, very strong tool that you can use if you do it right. So I'm right up, I hit the target, and now I'm one with the ship. And the anger just totally dissipates, and I'm sitting there and I'm feeling the ship, that it has a consciousness and it's talking to me in a way. And I get what the ship is doing there. The purpose of the ship is to protect whoever's on it, to automatically adjust the temperature and the oxygen control and the life support and all that kind of stuff. And not only that, it gives guidance through the universe as well. So when you're flying through the universe, it helps protect you from, whatever. So it's got life to it. It's kind of organic, even though it's made out of metal. So it's got like a memory that's associated with it, right? And I'm like, wow, I never knew this thing. I never knew these things had life like that, right? And then I popped back into the chair, and I guess my anger really triggered something because the alarm clock on the wall, the hands were swimming on it. It was going around really, really fast. The alarm clock on the bench was just going bing, 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 and the paper was flying off the shelf, and the pencil flew across the room. And he's just sitting there shocked. He's going, very good, very good, very good, very good. It's very good. It's very good.
So
and,
was your go
I
ahead.
popped back into my body. Go ahead.
So was your impression that, and again, just for everybody to understand, some of this stuff you can't really. There's no box to put it in, so you're kind of just doing your best to describe. But was it your impression this ship was like in a super evolved AI synthetic type consciousness, or is maybe like a consciousness that was put into this utility or something? I mean, if you had to describe it like that.
It was like its own little entity, like it had its own life. It's probably an AI type of thing where it had been developed where it could have its own memory. Because I had an experience where I was actually cruising on the ship. I was the one who was operating the vessel itself when we were off flying, and I felt like I was like the mother chip that was stuck into the middle of it. Everything was connected to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it was reading my biorhythms and all my bodily information and my thoughts. And it was helping me it was just sort of assessing information from me to see if I was on track. Okay, kind of like a training ship. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I was actually flying it. Yeah. But if I would have got in a place where it felt like there was danger, the occupants on the ship, it probably would have taken, control of it and done it. Because if you have the memory training associated with what you're doing, you don't have to think about something. Your body just automatically reacts. Like martial arts. Mm-hmm. If you go through martial arts, you just automatically trained. If you're on special forces, there are certain moves and things that your body is just automatically trained to do. Boxers are that way too. You're automatically trained. Muscle tone, muscle memory, your muscles just react. And they can do the same thing on the ship. So if they can feel like your muscles aren't in sync with what your mind wants it to do, or if you're getting out of place somehow, they will be able to adjust things to make sure nobody gets hurt.
Now, this gray that has been with you your whole life, has taught you things and kind of, how would you classify him as a mentor, as a friend, as an acquaintance? And then do you have a name for him? I mean, is there some kind of when you guys have
dude. He's been a lifelong associate. I haven't really seen him much lately in the last maybe 15 years, probably. I don't know if he's around much anymore, but in fact, that whole there's one area of my life that's just been kind of like, in fact, my grandma showed up one day and said, well, I'm out of here, I'm gone. I'm like, why? It is time for me to go. And she just left, so she used to drop in every once in a while. It's not. So he's one of those same type of guys who is there to develop and train me, and he would be there to make sure that it was okay. It was like a friend. I mean, he wasn't a biological unit. He was just, an entity that just looked different from me. He had a soul, body, and all that kind of stuff. So he just looked different from me. But he's kind of like a mentor, a friend, all bound into one. Got a close relationship with him. I imagine if I wanted him, I could probably call him back. But usually it seems to be these different type of beings that will show up anymore. It's not. A lot of the times they're more human looking. Like this, who I call Raphael. He's the being that keeps showing up every once in a while. He just walks through the wall. Mm-hmm. He'll just be there. He's the one that gave me the name of Shabala. He's the one that healed me when I was sick. The healings that I got with my heart surgery, it was a human looking guy that was there. You know, he's
Long hair?
so they're more human looking. No, this one surprisingly enough had like a short buzzed hair, and it kind of almost looked military, but his eyes were not human looking. You know, I mean, they were just these deep dark blue, and his hair was actually black, which surprised me because it's usually, you know, they have this blonde hair, long hair that hangs down. But maybe it was because he was doing a medical thing or something like that. I don't know, but his hair was short and it was in a medical setting.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was kind of there watching over and taking care of me for a period of time. That was really weird. I had the surgery. I was staying at home. I'll just briefly go
No,
over this
take
real
your time.
fast.
Take your time.
I was home recovering from the open heart surgery. And I was laying in my bed, and when you go through this surgery, your circadian rhythm is just way off whack. Okay, you'll stay up for 14 or 15 hours, and all of a sudden you just fall asleep for, 10 hours or whatever, and it could be any time of the day. So it's like 4 in the morning, and I'm watching TV, and I fall asleep on the couch, and I have a blanket over me, and I just kind of pass out. And I turn over and I try to pull the blanket. I can't get the blanket pulled up over me. I'm like, yeah, this is stuck, So I open my eyes and I'm not in my house. I'm not in my room. I'm not in my house. I'm somewhere else, And I'm looking out the window. It's a white room, big white room. I'm in there all by myself. I'm on a bed, and it's like a hospital bed, but one of my arms, the arms is sticking out there, and it's got an IV connected to it, but not in the arm. Okay, and there's an IV bag. It's dripping out this. There's a kind of a liquid, but it looks more like energy, and it's just flowing down this tube, and it's like it's just stuck on my arm, like a suction cup on my arm. Right? And you can see this thing come down and hit my arm, and it just kind of dissipates and goes through my arm. I look at that. I thought, oh, God. I'm trying to move this other arm on my other side. I can't move it. And I realize that I'm stuck in the blanket. And this guy shows up and he walks over and he adjusts the blanket so I can move my arm. And he just kind of looks at me. And I turn around and look out the window. And it's that guy. He's got the short, buzz type black hair, but his eyes are just a really crystal blue. Right. And he's very kind of stern looking. He's like, I'm taking care of you, don't bother me type of stuff, right? I'm looking out the window. There's one window in the room. It's off the side of the room. It's open, and there's a curtain there, and you see the curtain fluttering into the room, so there's a breeze blowing in the room. And as I look out the window, I can see there's a big green field, just a rolling field of green knee-high grass. And it's just a beautiful setting, and it's just these rolling hills going off the side right there. And he looks at me, and I look back at him, and said, like, it's going to be okay. And I said, oh, okay. So I fall back to sleep, and I wake up, and I'm in my room. So now, when I go to the doctor, the cardiologist really just got sick of seeing me. He says, you're fine. You don't have any problems. Your heart's in really, really good shape. There's only like about 1% damage that was done to it on something that I probably should maybe even died off of, And says, you're in good shape. Just call me next time. Just call me. You don't need to bother coming in. Just call me. Says it's my heart's probably better than most people are out there right now. So
amazing.
Kind of weird. Yeah.
So
and I was complaining that I never got any healings because I had this friend of mine who's got his bad back and he got healed from it. I thought, God, well, don't do anything for me, man. God, did that. I told you. I was like,
were you
did
you feel like were you on Earth, or you think you were somewhere else? I
I was somewhere else.
Really?
I was definitely somewhere else. Yeah, they had transported me someplace, and they were this whatever it was an energy injection of some sort, but it wasn't. And they have this weird way of doing it. It's not like they stick anything inside your body. It's just like a suction cup thing, and it just absorbs into you, and it just kind of flows into you. It helps you to heal. So they
don't
did
even
the same
have to
thing
make a prick. They could just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say too, I was watching Skinwalker the other day, and Courtney Brown's been saying this for quite some time now.
I loved Courtney Brown. That's the thing that really got me hooked into.
Stuff. Look, people give him a lot of grief in the community, but man, you got to give him credit. He's going after the topic. He's really pushing disclosure hard. But he had been saying this forever about these UFOs moving so fast that we just can't see them. So I go out and I get a camera, or actually at first I use my regular camera, and now our cell phones could take photos at 200 frames per second or something. And sure enough, I've got tons of these things. I mean, you could barely catch them in my camera, barely at 200 frames per second. But they're there, and I've got tons of them. But on Skinwalker, they had a camera that was 2,000 frames per second. Okay, so they could literally catch this thing and gauge the speed. Like, this thing's moving 4,000 miles an hour.
How's that even possible? Physics-wise, you think about physics-wise, you're looking out one side of the window, on one side of the ship, and all of a sudden they take off and you smash pancake on the other side of the ship, right?
Yeah.
That physics says that's how it should work. You'd just be a blob over there. Mm-hmm. But they manage it.
No sonic boom, no sound. They have to be in an envelope of something to be able to, there's no gravity in that space. There can't be. They'd be tapioca. So, but yeah. Anyway, thanks, Don, for coming on. We'll finish the online or the video portion of it. But thanks a lot for coming on, man. This is my first guest, and it's always fun talking to you, picking your brain on these topics.
It's been fun. Likewise, man. I mean, some of your insights have been amazing too. It's like, yeah, okay, this kind of correlates back and forth, So
absolutely.
It's really good stuff.
Thanks a lot, Don. We'll see you soon.
Hey, thanks for having me.